laughter started before he even stepped onto the mat. It rolled across the bright training yard like a wave, sharp and merciless under the blazing midday sun. Officers in crisp uniforms leaned against metal railings, recruits stretched in tight circles, and in the middle of it all stood a man who looked more like he had just come from a construction site than a police academy. His boots were worn, his t-shirt was faded, and in his hands he clutched a small pink backpack covered in cartoon butterflies. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whisper Tales 3. Stories like this remind us why judging someone too quickly can cost us everything. Arman Qureshi adjusted the strap of the backpack before kneeling to zip it carefully. Inside were crayons, a half-eaten apple, and a folded drawing of a house with 3 stick figures, though now there were only 2. His 5-year-old daughter, Meher, waited on a plastic chair near the fence, her small legs swinging nervously. The academy had refused childcare. He had no family nearby, so he brought her with him. The other recruits noticed. "Is this a daycare?" Someone muttered loudly enough for others to laugh. Arman kept his eyes down. He was 34, older than most applicants. His beard had streaks of early gray. There were dark circles under his eyes from working night shifts at a warehouse. After his wife passed away 2 years earlier from a sudden illness, the world had collapsed into hospital bills and sleepless nights. He had promised her he would chase his dream one day. Becoming a police officer had always been that dream. Not for the badge, not for power, but because he believed in protecting people the way he couldn't protect her. The physical tryouts were known to be brutal. Timed runs, strength drills, combat assessments. Under the harsh daylight, sweat shimmered on skin, and tension hung thick in the air. Arman finished near the bottom in the first sprint. Laughter again. He struggled with the pull-ups, his hands trembled halfway through. More laughter. He heard someone whisper, he should go back to babysitting. Each sound felt like a stone thrown at his back. But every time he looked toward the fence and saw Meher clutching her drawing, cheering silently with both tiny fists raised, something inside him refused to break. Then came the final evaluation, controlled combat sparring. Recruits were paired randomly. Arman's opponent was Farid Kaleem, a towering former national-level wrestler with arms like tree trunks and a chest that seemed carved from stone. Farid had been the center of attention all morning, finishing every drill at the top. When the pairings were announced, a ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. "This won't last 10 seconds, someone said. The instructor signaled them onto the mat. The sun glared off the white surface, forcing Arman to squint. His muscles already ached. His shirt clung to his back. Across from him, Farid smirked confidently, rolling his shoulders. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Arman thought of the warehouse, of stacking boxes until dawn. He thought of Meher asleep on a thin mattress, her small hand reaching out in the dark for a mother who would never come back. He thought of the nights he whispered promises to a photograph on the wall. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here to build a future. The whistle blew. Farid lunged forward with overwhelming force, aiming to grab and overpower him quickly. Gasps erupted as Arman stumbled backward. It looked exactly like everyone expected. Farid's strength drove him toward the edge of the mat, but Arman didn't fight with ego. He fought with patience. Years earlier, before life became hospital corridors and funeral prayers, Arman had trained in a small self-defense club after work. Nothing flashy, no trophies, just discipline, control, technique. Farid attempted a heavy takedown, putting his full weight behind it. In that split second, Arman pivoted. He shifted his balance, redirected the momentum, and used Farid's own force against him. The movement was quick, almost invisible. In less than 3 seconds, the giant recruit was flat on his back, the air knocked out of his lungs. Silence swallowed the yard. Even the birds seemed to pause mid-flight. Farid struggled, trying to regain leverage, but Arman had already secured control. Not aggressively, not cruelly, just decisively. The instructor stepped forward, stunned, and signaled the point. The laughter had vanished. On the sidelines, Meher jumped from her chair, clapping wildly. "That's my Baba!" she shouted, her tiny voice breaking the stillness. Arman released Farid immediately and offered him a hand up. There was no triumph in his expression, no arrogance, only quiet determination. Farid hesitated before taking his hand, something like respect replacing the earlier smirk. The remaining rounds told the same story. Arman didn't overpower, he outthought, he adapted. Every move was precise, controlled, disciplined. Years of invisible struggle had carved resilience into his bones. By the end of the session, the same recruits who had mocked him stood watching in disbelief. The instructors gathered, whispering among themselves. When the final results were posted on a clipboard under the shade of a neem tree, recruits crowded around. Arman stayed back. He was kneeling again, wiping dust off Meher's knees. Someone called his name. He stood slowly, heart pounding. Top 3, not first, but not last. Not forgotten, top 3. The instructor approached him in front of everyone. There was no applause yet, just anticipation. The officer looked at Meher, then at Arman. "Bring her tomorrow," he said quietly. "We'll arrange something." It wasn't just acceptance into training, it was acknowledgement. As the crowd dispersed, Farid walked over. He didn't laugh this time. He nodded once, firmly. Respect earned, not demanded. Arman lifted Meher into his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her cheek against his sweaty shoulder. "You're strong, Baba," she whispered. He smiled, but his eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. Strength, he realized, wasn't about muscles or noise or dominance. It was about showing up every day, even when the world laughed. It was about carrying a pink backpack into a battlefield of judgment and standing anyway. If this story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated or laughed at for chasing your dream, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. Your engagement helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. And before we close, I want you to comment one word: respect. For every single parent fighting silent battles no one sees. That afternoon, as father and daughter walked home under the golden daylight, the city looked different. The same streets, the same noise. But Arman's steps were lighter, not because he had defeated the strongest recruit, but because he had defeated a doubt that once whispered he wasn't enough. The laughter from the morning felt distant now, small and meaningless against the steady rhythm of his daughter's heartbeat against his chest. Sometimes the world mocks what it doesn't understand. Sometimes it takes only seconds to silence it. And sometimes, the strongest person in the room is the one carrying the heaviest love.